Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a story. Now, enjoy. The sun was just beginning to rise over the village of Umwaria, casting a soft, golden light on everything it touched. The air felt cool but held a promise of warmth soon enough. The smell of fresh earth and the sounds of early morning life filled the air. In a modest, weather-worn house at the edge of the village, a young girl named Neka awoke to the harsh voice of her stepmother, Ojechi. Neka was used to the loud, demanding tone by now, but it still made her heart race each time. "Neka, get up, now." Ojechi's voice was sharp, like the crack of a whip, and it pulled Neka from her dreams in an instant. Neka rubbed her eyes, the exhaustion from the day before still heavy on her small shoulders. She had worked long hours, from dawn till dusk, taking care of the house, fetching water, and helping her stepmother with her 2 younger children. Yet, nothing ever seemed enough. She rolled out of bed and shuffled to the kitchen, where Ojechi was already preparing the morning meal. The sight of her stepmother's back, hunched over the fire, was always a reminder of the power Ojechi held in the house. She could tell Neka what to do, when to do it, and even when to leave. Neka's father, Chaik, had passed away many years ago, and with him went the last shred of comfort Neka had known. Since then, Ojechi had ruled the house with a cold hand, never sparing a kind word for her stepdaughter. "Today, I need you to go into the village and fetch the basket of yams from the market. The vendors are waiting for me," Ojechi ordered, not even bothering to look at Neka. Neka nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Ojechi." Her heart sank as she prepared to leave. It wasn't the first time she had been sent out to run errands, but today felt different. There was something in the air, something she couldn't put her finger on. Neka grabbed the empty basket by the door and started walking toward the village. Her bare feet met the cool, dewy earth, and she took a deep breath of the morning air, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in her head. As she walked, she passed the familiar sights of her village: mud huts with thatched roofs, children playing in the dust, and elders seated in groups, chatting about the day's events. But today, everything felt distant, like she was watching it all from a far-off place. The path to the market was a well-worn one, and Neka had walked it countless times. But as she approached the village center, something strange happened. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just walking to the market. It felt like she was walking toward something far bigger, something that would change everything. Unbeknownst to Neka, that feeling wasn't just a random thought. It was the pull of destiny, a tug that would lead her to a place she had never imagined, a place where she would have to make choices she never thought she could. But for now, all she could do was walk, one step at a time, her heart heavy with the weight of the day ahead. The market loomed ahead, and she could hear the hum of people bargaining, the clinking of coins, and the sharp, familiar calls of the traders. Neka quickened her pace, determined to finish this errand and return home as quickly as possible. She knew Ojechi would never be patient for long. As she entered the market, the noise grew louder, but Neka couldn't shake the growing unease that gnawed at her. What was it that Ojechi wanted with her today? And why did it feel like something was waiting for her, just beyond the familiar stalls of yams and palm oil? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, as Neka stepped into the heart of the village market, unaware that her life was about to take a turn she never could have imagined. The air in the market was thick with the scent of fresh produce, fish, and the distinct sharpness of peppers. Neka weaved her way through the crowded paths, the familiar chatter of villagers filling her ears. She passed old women sitting in small groups, gossiping about the weather, and traders haggling over the price of yams, tomatoes, and plantains. As she approached the yam seller, Neka's heart skipped a beat. There was something different about today. It wasn't just the weight of her errand, nor the unfamiliar pull she had felt earlier, it was the feeling that she was walking in circles, trapped in a story that wasn't her own. The yam seller, a stout man named Ugakyu, saw Neka coming and gave her a knowing smile. He had known her since she was a little girl, and his eyes softened whenever he saw her. "Neka, my daughter, you're looking strong today," Ugakyu greeted her warmly, lifting a heavy yam and placing it in her basket. She smiled back weakly, nodding. "Thank you, Uncle Yugaku." He noticed the sadness in her eyes, but said nothing. It wasn't his place to question the quiet girl who had grown up under the roof of her stepmother. Instead, he handed her a few more yams and packed them tightly into the basket. "Your stepmother has been asking for these for a while. I hope she's treating you well." Neka's heart sank, but she managed to hold her composure. "She's fine, Uncle. Just busy." Yugaku studied her for a moment before gently patting her shoulder. "Take care of yourself, Neka. You've grown into a fine young woman, but remember you don't have to carry everything alone." Her breath caught in her throat. The words felt heavy, like a hidden truth she wasn't yet ready to face. She nodded, trying to smile, but the lump in her throat made it difficult. As Neka turned to leave, she overheard a conversation between two women at the palm oil stall. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman with a scar across her cheek, spoke in low tones, as if she was sharing a secret. "Have you heard? Ojechi has been planning something. She told her friends that Neka will no longer be staying with them. She's thinking of sending the poor girl to the city to work as a servant," the woman whispered. Neka froze, the basket in her hands suddenly feeling too heavy. Her heart raced as the words hit her like a cold wave. To the world, it might have seemed like just another conversation, a passing rumor, but to Neka, it felt like a chain snapping tight around her chest. She had heard whispers before, but hearing it from someone else made the truth all the more real. Her stepmother had been planning something that would take her far from everything she knew. Neka's fingers tightened around the basket's handle. She tried to shake off the fear that had settled deep inside her. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe the women were just gossiping. But the unease in her gut told her otherwise. She needed to return home quickly. Her legs moved before she had fully decided, her mind spinning with the new information. As she walked back toward the village outskirts, the weight of her errand seemed to double. The path that had once felt comforting now seemed unfamiliar, almost like a road to nowhere. She passed the familiar houses, her thoughts spiraling into a mix of confusion, fear, and disbelief. How could Ojechi do this to her? What had she done to deserve being pushed away? Neka was always quiet, always obedient, always the one who did all the chores, with no complaints. And yet, it seemed that wasn't enough. Ojechi's cruelty had only grown as the years had passed. The sweet moments from when her father was alive now felt like a dream she could barely remember. Neka quickened her pace, her bare feet pounding against the earth. She could feel the tension in the air as she drew closer to the house. The day was still young, but something about it felt off. The quiet whispers of the market followed her, like a shadow that wouldn't let go. By the time Neka reached her home, the sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows over the ground. Her heart beat faster as she approached the door. Would Ojechi be waiting for her? Would she confront her about the rumors she had heard? She stepped through the door, the familiar smell of smoke and cooking food immediately filling her nostrils. Ojechi was standing by the fire, stirring a pot of soup. The two younger children were playing in the corner, but Ojechi's eyes, sharp and cold, found Neka's immediately. "Where have you been?" Ojechi's voice was sharp, her tone cutting through the stillness of the house. Neka's mouth went dry. She didn't know how to answer, not with the thoughts swirling in her head. I went to the market, like you asked." Ojechi's gaze hardened as she looked at the basket in Neka's hands. "You took too long. You're good for nothing. Can't even do a simple task without wasting time." Neka's throat tightened. She had expected this, but it still stung. "I'm sorry, Ojechi." Ojechi didn't respond immediately. She just stared at her, the silence heavy between them. And in that silence, Neka could feel it, the quiet, dreadful realization that her life was about to change, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. That night, the house was too quiet. Neka lay curled on the small mat beside the kitchen, where Ojechi always made her sleep. The dim light from the oil lamp flickered on the wall, casting long, moving shadows. Her thoughts wouldn't let her rest. The words she heard at the market echoed in her mind. She's thinking of sending the poor girl to the city. She stared at the ceiling, heart pounding slowly but heavily, like a distant drum. From the other room, she could hear the low murmurs of Ojechi speaking with someone. The voice was unfamiliar, a man's. Deep, confident, and certain. Neka strained her ears, her breath shallow. She's ready. You can take her this Sunday. First thing in the morning. I don't want any questions. Will she come willingly? She'll have no choice. Silence. Then the scrape of chairs, the shuffle of feet, and finally, the closing of the front door. Neka's entire body went cold. Her breath trembled. She felt frozen to the mat, too afraid to move, too afraid to believe what she had just heard. Sunday. 3 days away. She shut her eyes tight, her small hands gripping the edge of the mat. There was no one to run to. No father. No aunt. No one. The only people who had once loved her were buried, scattered by time and death. But somewhere deep inside her, something stirred. Not anger, not just fear, but the kind of sharp awareness that comes when you realize you're on your own, and no one's coming to save you. The next morning, Neka moved through the house as usual, her face calm, her actions measured. She swept the front of the compound, washed the dishes, and carried water from the stream. Ojechi didn't say much to her, just kept giving her more tasks, piling them on with quiet satisfaction, as though preparing her for something final. By evening, Neka stood at the back of the compound, rinsing clothes in the big basin. Her hands moved mechanically, but her eyes kept drifting toward the fence. The thought kept repeating itself like a warning bell, 3 days. She didn't know the man's name. She didn't know where he would take her. But she knew one thing: Ojechi had made up her mind, and there would be no changing it. Later that night, when the younger children were asleep and Ojechi was in her room, Neka tiptoed outside. The moon was high, the sky full of stars. She walked to the back of the compound, to the spot under the mango tree where her father used to sit with her, telling her stories and brushing her hair gently while she dozed off in his arms. She knelt down slowly, her fingers brushing the dry soil. "Papa," she whispered, her voice shaking. "If you can hear me, I need help. I don't know what to do." The wind blew lightly through the leaves. A sudden calm filled her chest. And in that moment, Neka didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, the village was noisy with news of a missing girl from another compound, Chinya, the tailor's niece. No one knew where she'd gone. People whispered. Some said she had run away. Others believed something darker had happened. But Neka stood quietly in the corner of the compound, listening, saying nothing. She felt like a matchstick sitting next to a flame, too close to burn, but not far enough to feel safe. That evening, as the sky turned red-orange and the birds flew home, Ojechi called her aside. Her voice was unusually calm. "Pack your things," she said without looking at her. "You'll be leaving this house on Sunday morning. And I don't want any tears or questions." Neka said nothing. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just turned and walked back into the house. Her legs felt like they would give way beneath her. But her heart, it was no longer trembling. A seed had been planted inside her. Something new. Something quietly dangerous. She had 3 days. 3 days to figure out how not to disappear. 3 days to decide who she was going to be. Friday morning arrived with the smell of wet sand in the air. Rain had fallen in the night, a brief, gentle drizzle that didn't cool anything but left the ground soft and damp. Neka woke earlier than usual, her eyes open before the first cockcrow. She didn't move for a long time. She just lay there, listening to the slow breathing of the house, staring at the shadows on the wall. 2 days left. She sat up and reached for her small bag, the only thing she truly owned. A worn wrapper, her father's old handkerchief, a wooden comb with one missing tooth. Nothing else. Everything else in the house belonged to Ojechi or had become part of the life that no longer felt like hers. She tied the bag shut, even though she knew it wasn't time yet. It gave her something to do, something to hold on to. Outside, the world was already stirring. The smell of yam porridge came from a neighbor's kitchen. A baby cried somewhere in the distance. Life was moving as it always had, but not for Neka. She spent the morning scrubbing pots, her hands soaked in cold water, her thoughts tangled. Ojechi moved around the house with quiet satisfaction, humming softly to herself as she stirred the pot of ogbono soup. She had not said another word since telling Neka to pack. But she watched her. Every movement, every glance. Neka could feel it, the way a person feels heat near fire. Ojechi didn't trust her to stay quiet. She was waiting for a sign of resistance, a moment of rebellion. But Neka gave her nothing. Around midday, a familiar voice called from the gate. Neka. She turned quickly. It was Emeka, the boy from down the road who used to walk with her to school before she stopped going. He was a few years older now, taller, stronger. His shirt clung to his back with sweat, and his hands held 2 small loaves of bread. "I brought these from the shop," he said with a grin, lifting the bread. "Mama asked me to give you one." Neka hesitated. Ojechi was inside. She shouldn't talk to anyone. But something about Emeka's voice gave her courage. She stepped out, met him by the gate, and reached for the bread. "Thank you," she said, her voice low. Emeka looked at her closely, his smile fading just slightly. "Are you all right? You look tired." Neka nodded, forcing a smile. "Just housework." He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. But he didn't press. Instead, he leaned in a little and said quietly, "If you ever need anything, if anything happens, come to our compound. My mother won't ask questions." Neka's breath caught. She blinked, then nodded once. He left without another word. She stood at the gate long after he'd gone, the bread warm in her hands. It wasn't just bread anymore. It was proof that someone still saw her. That not everyone had turned their back. That evening, after the chores, after Ojechi fed her children and locked the kitchen cupboards like she always did, Neka sat outside and watched the sky. The clouds moved slowly, pulling colors across the horizon, deep purple, soft orange, fading blue. She thought of her father again. The way he would hum old songs while peeling oranges. The way his hands had always felt rough but safe. She missed him so badly it hurt in her chest. As night came, Ojechi stepped outside and stood beside her, arms folded. Her tone was sharp, but quieter than usual. "You should sleep early tomorrow. The man is coming before church." Neka turned slowly, looked at her stepmother, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small. She didn't respond. She just stood up and walked back inside, leaving Ojechi in the dark. That night, she didn't cry. She didn't beg God to change her fate. She lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the moonlight crawling across the floor. She was no longer hoping someone would come to rescue her. She was waiting. For the morning. For Sunday. For the moment everything would break open. Sunday morning arrived like a thief. The air felt still, too still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Neka opened her eyes before the first knock of the pestle in the neighbor's kitchen. The sky outside the window was gray, as though the day itself was unsure. Her small bag was already tied and tucked beneath her mat. She had barely slept. Her body rested, but her mind had been wide awake, playing different versions of what might happen. Footsteps moved across the compound. Ojechi's voice came next. "Neka, dress up. He'll be here soon." There was no trace of emotion in her voice, no pity, no hesitation. Just finality. Neka stood slowly, her hands trembling as she unfolded the wrapper she would wear. The old yellow one with faded flower patterns, her mother's, the only thing left of her. She tied it tightly and ran her hand over it once, like a quiet promise to herself. Ojechi's children were already dressed in their Sunday clothes. They laughed and played in the sitting room, unaware of what their mother had arranged. To them, Neka was just the girl who washed their clothes and fed them when Ojechi didn't feel like it. The knock came minutes later. A low, deliberate knock. Not loud. Not rushed. It didn't sound like a visitor. It sounded like a decision. Ojechi opened the door. The man who entered was tall, with a beard that hadn't been properly shaved. He wore a faded brown shirt tucked into trousers that hung awkwardly at his waist. His face was expressionless, but his eyes moved quickly, first to the children, then to the pots, then finally to Neka. "So this is her?" he asked. Ojechi nodded, picking up Neka's small bag and pressing it into her hand. "She's strong. Doesn't talk too much. Just give her food, and she'll work." Neka didn't move. The man gave her a brief, almost dismissive look, then turned back toward the door. "Let's go. We have a long way to travel." Neka stepped forward, her legs moving like they didn't belong to her. The weight of the moment pressed down on her shoulders, heavy and sharp. But her heart wasn't shaking anymore. It was burning. Just before she reached the door, Emeka appeared. He was breathless, his shirt damp with sweat, his eyes wild. "Neka," he called out, voice cracking. Ojechi's face changed instantly. "What is it? Who invited you here?" she barked. But Emeka didn't look at her. He looked straight at Neka. "Don't go," he said. "Please. Don't go with him." The man at the door shifted. "Is this boy mad? Move out of the way." Emeka stepped between Neka and the door, planting his feet like a tree rooted in place. "My mother knows everything. She said if Neka doesn't want to go, she doesn't have to." Ojechi's voice rose, high and sharp. "Who do you think you are? This is my house." But Neka's voice cut through the noise. Calm. Clear. "I'm not going." Everyone froze. Even the man by the door turned, eyes narrowing. "What?" Neka stepped back. Her heart pounded, but her words were steady. "I said I'm not going. You won't sell me off like a bag of beans." Ojechi's face twisted in disbelief. She took a step toward Neka, fury all over her face. "You think you have a choice?" Neka looked her in the eyes, really looked at her. For the first time, Ojechi's power didn't feel so large. Her cruelty didn't feel so final. "I have a choice now," Neka said. "And I've made it." Emeka reached for her hand, gently, and Neka let him. Behind them, the man mumbled something under his breath and turned away, clearly annoyed that his trip had been wasted. "You'll regret this," Ojechi shouted, her voice shaking the room. But Neka didn't look back. She stepped out of the house, into the cool morning air, and walked down the narrow path beside Emeka, past the tall trees, past the neighbor's stairs, past the life she was no longer bound to. And for the first time in a long time, the road ahead didn't look like an ending. It looked like the beginning of a story she would write herself. The road to Emeka's house was quiet. Too quiet for all the noise in Neka's chest. She walked slowly, her fingers still wrapped around his. Neither of them spoke for a while. The sky had started to clear, revealing a soft blue above. But inside her, the storm was just beginning to settle. When they reached the compound, Emeka's mother, Mema Uju, was waiting at the entrance. Her wrapper was tied tightly over her chest, and a scarf rested crookedly on her head like she'd thrown it on in a hurry. She looked nothing like Ojechi. Her eyes were fierce, but warm. Her arms strong, but open. She didn't ask Neka any questions. She didn't wait for an explanation. She simply opened the door wide and said, "Come inside, my daughter. You must be tired." That one word, daughter, cut through Neka like sunlight through cold fog. She stepped into the house, unsure if her legs would hold, unsure if her body truly believed she was safe now. Inside, the walls were painted the color of ripe pawpaw. Faded family photos hung unevenly. A small plastic fan hummed on a table in the corner. Everything smelled like beans and dry fish and home. Mema Uju handed her a stool to sit on, then brought a bowl of warm water and a towel. "Wash your hands, En? Then I'll bring you food." Neka tried to speak, to say thank you, but the words wouldn't come out. Her throat was tight. Her chest full. She nodded quickly, blinking fast. Emeka watched her silently from the doorway. He didn't smile. He just stayed close, as if holding the air around her steady. Mama Uju returned with a plate of rice and stew. The pepper stung Neka's eyes before it even touched her lips, but she ate slowly, carefully, like someone learning to breathe again. Later that afternoon, Emeka sat beside her under the mango tree behind the house. The shade gave them privacy. The air was thick with heat and the smell of the earth after yesterday's rain. She really was going to sell you, he said quietly. Neka nodded. She planned it days ago. I heard her speaking to the man. I just didn't know what to do. Emeka pulled at the grass beneath him, his jaw tight. My mum suspected something. That man, he's known in the next village. People say he takes girls and they don't come back. Neka's stomach turned. She looked down at her bare feet, the dirt on her toes, the tiny scratch on her ankle from this morning. She would have let him take me like I was nothing, she whispered. You're not nothing, Emeka said. They sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was full of things neither of them needed to say out loud. By evening, word had spread. Ojechi stormed to Mama Uju's compound just after sunset, her slippers flapping like thunder. She didn't come alone, two of her church friends followed close behind, arms folded like bodyguards. Mama Uju stepped outside to meet them, hands on her hips. You came to the wrong house if you think you'll collect that girl, she said calmly. She's my husband's child, Ojechi snapped. She belongs in my house. Your husband is in the ground, and you threw the girl out like old clothes, Mama Uju fired back. Now you want to remember she's your daughter. She's mine. She's not a goat, Ojechi. The women behind Ojechi shifted uncomfortably. One of them tried to speak, but Mama Uju raised her hand. If you force this, I'll call the youth leader. And the chairman. Let the whole village hear what you've been doing. Ojechi's face twisted. She looked like she might burst. But instead, she hissed, turned sharply, and stormed off, her slippers kicking dust as she went. That night, Neka slept in a room with Mama Uju's youngest daughter, Onioni, who snored gently with her mouth open. As Neka lay there, staring at the roof, her heart still beat fast, but not from fear anymore. It beat with questions. Who was she now? What future could she make with her own hands? And what would she do with this fire inside her that refused to die? The pain hadn't left her. But for the first time, the pain had space to breathe. And it was turning into something else. Morning in Mama Uju's house came gently. No one shouted. No one banged doors. There was no clatter of pots flung in anger. Just the soft sweep of a broom against the floor, the smell of groundnut oil heating in the pan, and Onioni humming a song in her sleep. Neka woke slowly, blinking at the light slipping through the curtain. For a moment, she didn't move. Her body felt lighter than usual, as if some invisible load had been lifted overnight. But her mind, it hadn't caught up yet. It was still trying to believe the danger was behind her. She sat up on the mattress and glanced at Onioni, who lay sprawled like a lizard, mouth wide open, leg half off the bed. A small, unexpected laugh escaped Neka's lips before she covered her mouth quickly. It had been a long time since anything had made her laugh. In the kitchen, Mama Uju was frying akara. She didn't turn when Neka walked in. Morning, my daughter. You slept well? Yes, Ma. Good. Sit down. Help me turn this batch. Neka took the spoon with both hands, careful not to spill, and gently flipped each ball. The smell rose like comfort itself, making her stomach grumble. After a moment, Mama Uju spoke again, her voice quieter this time. You know, people like Ojechi, they think they're strong because they can shout and punish and control. But true strength, it's in surviving. Neka didn't reply. She didn't know what to say. But those words lodged somewhere deep inside her, where they refused to fade. Later that day, while Onioni went off to grind pepper at the mill and Emeka helped a neighbor fix their fence, Neka sat alone at the back of the house, staring at the sky. For the first time, she wasn't thinking of how to escape. She was thinking of how to rebuild. But from what? She didn't have much. No money. No schooling since Papa died. No promises waiting for her. Still, she had hands. And time. And now, a roof where no one screamed her name in anger. As she thought, Mama Uju came around the corner, wiping her hands on her wrapper. I know someone, she said, startling Neka. She trains girls in tailoring. She's not far. And she doesn't charge much if the girl is serious. Neka looked up slowly. Tailoring? Mama Uju nodded. It's something. Not everything, but something. A way to make your own name, earn your own food. Maybe even teach someone else one day. A quiet flutter danced in Neka's chest. Not excitement, not yet. But possibility. Do you think she'll take me? She asked. Mama Uju smiled. If you want it enough. Neka pressed her palms together, unsure what to do with all the hope she suddenly held. I'll go, she said, softly. I want to try. That evening, Emeka returned, shirt torn slightly at the shoulder. I heard Ojetches talking again, he said. Telling people you ran away and that Mama Uju bewitched you. Neka shook her head. Calm now. Let her talk. Her voice doesn't matter anymore. Emeka studied her for a moment, then nodded. The sun began to fall, bathing the compound in orange and gold. Children laughed nearby. A goat wandered lazily past the fence. And in the middle of it all, Neka stood taller than she had ever stood before. Not because she had escaped, but because she had started to become. And deep in her chest, a quiet voice whispered, You are not finished. You are just beginning. The next few days passed like soft waves on a river, slow, steady, and carrying Neka to a place she didn't fully understand yet. There were no sudden leaps, no miraculous transformations, but there was progress. And for the first time, Neka let herself believe that progress could be enough. On Monday morning, after a breakfast of yam porridge and fried plantain, Mama Uju took Neka to see the woman who ran the tailoring school. The journey was short, a walk past the dusty paths that wound through the village to a small compound at the end of the road. It was a quiet place, shaded by tall coconut trees, with clothes drying on the line and the hum of a sewing machine from inside. The woman who greeted them was stout, her face framed by the thick, graying braids of someone who had lived and worked through every season the earth could offer. Her eyes were sharp, but kind, assessing Neka like one would a piece of cloth, running her fingers over it, feeling for its texture, its strength. You want to learn tailoring? The woman asked, her voice low but firm. Neka nodded. She didn't say much. There was no need for many words. She had already made up her mind. The woman studied her for a moment longer before turning to Mama Uju. She's young. I won't lie, it will take time. It's not easy work. But I think she has the hands for it. What about school? I don't have one, Neka replied quietly, her voice almost lost under the weight of truth. The woman nodded again. Then you'll learn by doing. No shortcuts. No easy way out. If you want this, it's yours. Mama Uju stepped forward then, her voice steady. She'll work. She'll learn. Whatever it takes. The woman looked from Mama Uju to Neka, then gave a satisfied grunt. All right. I'll take you. Tomorrow morning. Be ready. Neka swallowed the excitement that rose in her throat like a sudden flood. This was it. The door had opened. And this time, it was her hand on the knob. That evening, Emeka was waiting outside when Neka returned, a mix of determination and excitement bubbling up inside her. He saw the change the moment he looked at her. You did it, didn't you? He asked, his voice low but filled with admiration. Neka nodded. I'm starting tomorrow. He smiled, a rare, full smile that lit up his whole face. That's good. You're going to be great. They stood there for a moment, under the quiet sky, the sounds of evening settling around them. The last few days had been full of unknowns, but now, in this quiet space, Neka felt the soft beginnings of something familiar. Hope. When Neka returned inside to prepare for bed, Mama Uju sat by the small fire she had built in the kitchen, preparing soup for the evening meal. The flickering flames danced on the walls, casting long shadows. "You know, my daughter," Mama Uju said, her voice suddenly soft, "it's not easy. What you're doing. But I see you. I see your strength." Neka glanced at her, meeting her eyes for the first time in days. "I'm not strong, Mama Uju. I just don't know how to be weak anymore." Mama Uju's face softened, the lines around her eyes deepening as if the years she had lived had been filled with both struggle and wisdom. Being weak is a choice too. It's not just about not having the strength to fight. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to stand up. Neka nodded slowly, taking in her words. They made sense, but they also felt new, unfamiliar. She stood, walked to the small cupboard, and pulled out a small calabash. She began to scoop out a handful of dried beans to soak for tomorrow's stew, the simple, quiet rhythm of the task grounding her in the present moment. Tomorrow was a big day. The first real day of her new life. And yet, there was a part of her that felt like this was all just the start of something far larger. Far bigger than the tailoring lessons or the meals she would cook. It felt like the beginning of learning how to live again. After a while, Neka's hands stopped, and she looked at Mama Uju. "I'll do this," she said, her voice steady, but full of a quiet promise. "I'll make this work." Mama Uju smiled. The kind of smile that was both a blessing and a challenge. "I know you will," she said. "You have the heart of a lion." And with that, for the first time in a long while, Neka allowed herself to hope not just for survival, but for something more. For strength. For a future she was no longer afraid to shape. The next morning, Neka woke earlier than usual. The sun had just started to stretch its golden fingers over the horizon, casting a soft light across the earth. There was a new kind of energy in her veins, one she hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just another morning of running errands or cleaning someone else's mess. This was her first step toward building something that was truly hers. She dressed quickly, tying her wrapper with precision, brushing her hair back into a neat bun. The excitement in her chest was a strange mix of nerves and hope. It felt like she was about to step onto a new path, but she had no idea where it would lead. Mama Uju was already in the kitchen when Neka came out, preparing another pot of yam porridge for breakfast. She looked up as Neka stepped into the room, a warm smile spreading across her face. "You look ready," Mama Uju said, her voice steady and proud. "Remember, today is the start. Don't rush it. Take your time, and do it right." Neka nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She sat down to eat the small breakfast that Mama Uju had prepared. The food, simple but nourishing, filled her up, giving her the energy she needed for the day ahead. Emeka, already dressed and ready for his own day of work, came in just as she finished her meal. He flashed her a grin, his eyes bright with encouragement. "You'll do well, Neka. I know you will." She smiled back, the weight of his faith in her almost enough to make her believe she could do anything. After breakfast, Neka gathered her small bag, the one she had brought with her when she left Ojechi's house, and Mama Uju led her down the same path they had walked the day before. The road to the tailoring school seemed longer today, as if the distance between her old life and the one she was about to step into was measured by every step she took. The woman, whose name was Mrs. Ada, was already waiting for them when they arrived, her sewing machine humming steadily. She looked up as they approached, her face breaking into a welcoming smile. "You're here early," Mrs. Ada said, motioning for Neka to come inside. "I like that. Shows you're serious." Neka stepped into the small room, taking in the sight of the old sewing machine, the fabric strewn across the tables, and the piles of clothes stacked neatly on one side. It was a humble place, but there was an energy here. A sense of purpose. "Now, listen carefully," Mrs. Ada continued. "This is not going to be easy. There are no shortcuts. You'll have to pay attention. You'll need patience. But if you stick with it, you'll get the hang of it." Neka nodded. She was ready. More than ready. Mrs. Ada led her to a corner of the room where a machine sat waiting for her. "This is your station for now. We'll start with the basics. Learn how to thread the machine, how to sew straight lines, how to measure properly." Necka's fingers trembled slightly as she sat down at the machine, the weight of the moment sinking in. She had never done anything like this before. But there was a strange sense of calm that washed over her, as if she had been preparing for this day her whole life without even realizing it. Hours passed like minutes. Mrs. Ada was strict, but fair. She didn't let Necka get away with mistakes, but she also didn't make her feel stupid for them. Each time Necka made a wrong move, Mrs. Ada patiently showed her the right way. "Do it like this," she would say, guiding Necka's hands, correcting her posture. By the time the sun began to dip low in the sky, Necka had completed her first task, a small, uneven piece of cloth sewn together in a jagged line. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. But it was hers. And that meant everything. When Mrs. Ada inspected the work, she didn't scold her. Instead, she gave a small nod. "Not bad for your first try. We'll work on it tomorrow. But you have potential. I can see it." Necka smiled, the exhaustion from the day's work creeping into her bones. It felt like she had climbed a mountain, small, but meaningful. As she walked back home with Mama Uju, the cool night air against her skin, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, pride. She was doing something. She was becoming something. Emeka was waiting for her when they returned, sitting by the small fire pit outside. His face lit up when he saw her approach. "How was it?" he asked, his voice full of curiosity. "I didn't mess up too much," Necka replied, her eyes sparkling. "I think I might actually be good at this." Emeka laughed, shaking his head. "I knew it. I knew you would be." As the stars began to flicker above them, Necka sat down beside him, feeling the warmth of the fire spread across her skin. She didn't have all the answers yet. But she knew one thing for sure: she was no longer a girl waiting to be saved. She was a woman with a future to build. And that future was hers to shape. For the first time in a long time, Necka felt the weight of the world lift just a little, replaced by the strength of her own hands. And in that moment, she knew this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed were a blur of progress, small victories, and quiet setbacks. Necka's fingers became more accustomed to the sewing machine, her stitches more even, her confidence growing with each piece of cloth she worked on. Every evening, she would return home, tired but satisfied, the weight of her work filling her chest with a new kind of purpose. Mama Uju watched her closely, her approval never voiced in loud words, but always in the little things: the extra meal, the new set of thread she bought for her, the way she praised her when she caught a glimpse of Necka's improvements. Emeka, too, noticed the change. He watched Necka walk with a little more ease, a little more strength, as the days went on. He no longer saw the girl who had been hiding, afraid to face the world. He saw someone who was beginning to fight back, not with anger or bitterness, but with the quiet determination that only comes from knowing who you are. One afternoon, after Necka had finished working on a small order for a local woman in the village, Mrs. Ada called her over. "You've been here for almost a month now," she said, her voice gentle but steady. "And I have to say, you've come a long way. I think it's time you start learning to make something more than just straight lines." Necka's heart skipped a beat. "Like what?" Mrs. Ada smiled, a rare, soft smile that softened the sharpness of her features. "A dress. You're ready. We'll take it step by step. Don't rush it. Just trust your hands." Necka couldn't stop the grin that spread across her face. She was nervous, terrified even, but something inside her told her that this was exactly what she needed. She wasn't just learning to sew anymore. She was learning to create. To bring something beautiful into the world, with nothing but her hands and the cloth before her. The days turned into weeks, and the dress began to take shape. It was slow at first. Mrs. Ada would guide her, showing her how to take measurements, how to cut the fabric just right. But with every day, Necka became more comfortable. The fabric no longer felt like a strange thing between her hands. It became a part of her, flowing and bending to her will. And soon, the dress was finished. It wasn't perfect, there were still small imperfections, rough edges here and there, but it was hers. Every stitch, every seam, was a reflection of the work she had put into it. On the day she finished the dress, Mrs. Ada didn't just nod in approval. She held the dress up, inspecting it carefully, then turned to Necker with a smile. "You've done well," she said, her voice full of pride. "You've earned this." Necker couldn't stop the rush of warmth in her chest. It wasn't just the dress. It was everything she had become in the process. The girl who had walked into this room weeks ago, uncertain and broken, was no longer the same. She was someone who had learned to make things with her hands, to shape her own destiny. That evening, Mama Uju cooked a special meal in celebration. The small house filled with the rich smells of pepper soup, fried plantains, and jollof rice. Even Onioni, who had spent most of the day with her friends, came running back with a smile, excited to eat. Emeka came by too, carrying a basket of fresh tomatoes and onions, his usual grin spread across his face. When he saw Necker, his eyes lit up, and he pulled her into a hug before she could say a word. "You did it," he said, his voice soft but full of admiration. "You really did it." Necker smiled, feeling the warmth of the hug fill her up. "It's just the beginning," she said, her voice steady now, not the unsure tone she had carried before. "There's more to come." As they sat down to eat, the laughter and chatter around the table felt like the echo of a life she hadn't known was possible. Necker looked around at the people gathered there, Mama Uju, Emeka, Onioni, and she felt something in her heart that was both tender and strong. This was her family now. And this was her life. No longer was she the girl who had been thrown away, lost in the streets. She had found something far more important, herself. The night ended slowly, with the sky outside full of stars. Necker sat on the small bench outside, her fingers tracing the outline of the dress she had made, the fabric soft and warm in her hands. She thought of the future, of the shop she could one day own, of the girls she might teach to sew, of the women whose dresses she would create. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt like she could conquer the world. Because Necker had learned something that no one could ever take away from her, the strength to make her own way. To build her future. One stitch at a time. And that was all she needed. Moral of the story. No matter how deeply life tries to bury you, your strength, resilience, and determination can rise from even the harshest pain. Necker's journey shows that rejection doesn't define you, your choices do. With kindness, courage, and the will to start again, anyone can turn broken pieces into something beautiful. Help may not come from where you expect, but when you decide to fight for yourself, the world begins to open up. Key lessons. Pain doesn't mean the end, it can be the beginning of growth. The right people can change your story, but you must take the first step. Strength isn't about having everything, it's about doing your best with what you have. Every dream begins small. What matters is not where you start, but that you start at all. Hi family, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Drop it in the comment.